In this video, we will illustrate how to implement Ajax in Django by implementing this app for counters. So we can have different types of counters in here. We can add to them, subtract, and we will build this project from scratch and make sure we set the CSRF token correctly. Ajax is a technique that allows us to update a subsection of a page without refreshing the entire page. So here, when we update this counter, the page doesn't get reloaded, only this specific field gets recomputed. And this results in a much better user experience, especially for pages that take a long time to compute or pages that have big assets such as images. The final source code will be linked in a video description below. And because we are starting from scratch, there will be a lot of build up until we get to the Ajax part, but you can skip ahead using the video chapters. We will start by initializing a new Django project. So we'll have this new terminal, and in here we'll create a new environment with Python 3. We'll call it VE&V. We need to activate the environment. It's in here, activate. Then we need to install Django. And now we can create our project with Django-admin start project, and we will call this Ajax demo. So we can see in here it created this Ajax demo directory. Next, we will open this Ajax demo directory in our code editor. I'm using IntelliJ IDEA, but it's not too important because we are going to run the server in the terminal. So feel free to use whatever you are comfortable with. In my case, I will do new project from existing sources, and in here I select the Ajax demo directory. Just do next. And here I need to select an SDK. Let's see. I think I'll just add a new one. I need to select the Python binary inside VE&V. Like this. It recognized that it's a Django project. We can run our project in a new terminal. We will just do manage.py and then run server. And this will start it on port 8000. Let's see. So this is just the standard project that is generated. Make sure it's on screen. Now we will add a new app to our project, and we will call this counter. So in a new terminal tab, we can do Python manage.py start app counter. So we will see this added a new directory to our project. Now we need to add this new app we need to link it to the main one. So inside Ajax demo settings, the installed apps variable, we need to add counter in here. And now we can add the first view to our app. So in here, inside counter, in views, we will create a new view called index, which takes the argument of request, and it will simply return a render of request, and the template name will be counter and index.html, which doesn't exist, but we will create it right now. So we will add a new HTML file inside counter, templates, counter, and then index.html. The title will be counter, and in here it will just say hello world. Like that. So now we need to create the URLs file in our app. So we will add a new URLs Python file. So we will add the URL patterns variable, and the path will be the path will be empty string, and the views will be from views index, and the name will be index. We need to import the views from counter import views, and the path from Django URLs path. And now we need to link the URLs from the counter app to the main one. So in here we will just do a subpath for counters, and in here we will just include the counter.urls, and we need to make sure we import this include method from Django, so from Django URLs. So now if we just go to in the browser to /counters, we will see the view we just added. Next, we will add the Bootstrap 5 CSS library to our project. We will use it for layout, for a good CSS default, and for the buttons. So we will do Bootstrap 5 download. Bootstrap 5, and we'll just do the version from CDN. These two lines, we will add them to index.html in the header below title. And also in here, we can, just to try it, we will add a new tag main, and the class will be container, which comes from Bootstrap, and we will move this hello world tag inside main. So now if we reload our page, yeah, we will see that the style has changed. Now we will add a database model for our counters. So inside the counter app, inside models.python, we will add a new model in here. Let's call this one class counter, and it will inherit from models.model. So it has two fields, name, which will be the name of the counter. It'll be model character field, char field, let's say max length 255, and value, which will be the value of the counter, and it will be models integer field and a default of 0. And we also need to write the string representation function for this model, and it will simply be, we will do the string interpolation, the ID. All the models have an ID in Django, and the name of the counter. And yeah, this should be it. We will use this one in the admin page. Now we can generate the migrations for this model and for the admin models. So we will do manage python manage.py. This is back to our terminal tab, and we will do make migrations and also migrate. Okay, very good. And we will also run the create super user. Here, yeah, I will use, actually let's just use admin, no email address. I will do abc123. It doesn't matter because we will not publish this website on the internet, so we can bypass this validation. Very good. So now if we go back to our website, if we go to /admin, here we do admin, our password abc123. Don't update. And yeah, we need to link our counter to the admin page. we need to register it to the admin page. So inside counter admin, in here we need to do admin.site.register and then our model counter. We need to import it from counter models. So now if we go back to the admin page and we refresh, we can see the counter model, and we can add a few counters in here. Let's call this one apples, whatever, value 2. Let's see, oranges, 0, that's fine. And bananas. Okay, this should be good. So if we go here, we can see the 3 counters we added. Next, we will display all the counters in our root counters page. So instead of our basic view we have right now that just displays hello world, we will switch it with the generic list view from Python. So in here, inside counters views.python, we will create a new view in here, this time as a class. Let's call this one counter list view, and it will inherit from generic.listView. And the model will be counter, like that. And the we will reuse the same template. We will just modify it, so it'll be counter index.html. We need to import the generic views from Django, and also the counter model. Counter models counter. Okay, very good. So now inside URLs in here, we will switch our views.index to the new list view. It'll be counter list view, and then it will be as view. Make sure we import it. So now the counter list view, it will send to the template a new variable called counter list, and we can see it right now. So if we go to template index, here we can do a for loop. So it will be for counter in counter list, let's say and for. So in here, if we do a paragraph, counter will actually be an object, so it has the counter dot ID, and then it has counter dot name and counter dot value. So now if we refresh our page, we will see, oh yeah, for some reason it tries to use this template. I thought we overwrote the template. Just one second. Yeah, this one should be template name, my bad. So now if we reload this one, we will see all our counters that we created in the admin page. By the way, you can read more about Django generic views. There's a page, you just search for Django generic views. So once you have a model in your app, you can create a details page for that app, a list view, and so on. It saves a lot of effort from creating templates. The next step will be improving the style of this list view, getting it closer to the final version. So let's call this, instead of hello world, this will be counters. Like that. And now we will create a div with class row from Bootstrap for each counter. So it will be class row, and we'll also add some space at the bottom of 0.5 REMs. So now we will add two divs. The first one will be, let's call this one spanning 3 columns. So this one will just have the counter ID and counter name. Actually, I'll copy them from below. Okay, and the other one will have the button for decreasing from subtracting from the counter. Let's call this one, let's set the label subtract. We will have a button for adding. This one will be add, and also a span with the counter value. Counter that value. Okay. Now we no longer need this, and also this one should be part of the row. So this one should be in here. And this one is also a column, but not a col/3, just a regular one. And we are left with this thing, which looks a bit better, but the next step to improve it will be to style the buttons accordingly. So if we go to Bootstrap and we search for buttons, we want a button of danger and a button of success. So the green one will be for adding the counter, the red one will be for decreasing, but we are going to use this outline version. So this one will be button outline success in class, like that, and the other one button outline danger. Okay, let's see what happens now. Okay, now they have the correct style, but I will make them smaller. So there's this btn-sm version that makes them smaller. And again, btn-sm. So now if we reload it, we see it looks pretty good. We want to add a bit of space between subtract and the counter, and between the counter and add. So for this, we will just do ME2 here. It will add 0.5 rems, so 8 pixels by default. And I think this one's MS-2. Okay, very good. And also we see that this the counter name is not aligned vertically. So for this, we will turn this div into, we will set display flex with d/flex, and also align items center for aligning the text vertically. And we see now it looks like we want it. Okay, now we are finally ready to work on the Ajax request. So for the people who skipped ahead on the YouTube video, this is what we have at the moment. We have this list view in Django where every counter is in a row. There's one column that contains the counter ID and the counter name, this part from here. And there's another column that has 2 buttons and a counter value. The buttons, they just have some classes from Bootstrap, and the value is a span. So this part over here for each row. Okay, so the first thing we will do is to add IDs to all these buttons and to the span, which is the value. This will help us add event listeners to the buttons, and also identify this span when we want to do DOM manipulation once we get the response. So in here for this button, we will give the ID. Let's call this one sub, and then dash, and then the counter ID, like that. This one will be the ID will be, this one will be add with 2 Ds dash counter dot ID, and the span will be value dash and then counter dot ID. So now if we reload the page, if we do inspect in here, we will see there's button ID sub 1, span value 1, and then for the second row it will be in here it will be sub 2, value 2, add 2, and so on. For adding the event handlers to the buttons, making the Ajax request, and also updating the page once we get the response, we will use the jQuery JavaScript library. It's an old school library, but still very useful. It works very well. So if we search for jQuery CDN, we will pick this version minified from jQuery 3.x. So we just need to copy this tag in here into our HTML. And we will set it, let's say here at the end of, actually after we close the main tag right before body. This will make sure that the page loads entirely, and then it's trying to import the script, and then we will add the event handlers in a different script. So now we will add a class, a CSS class that doesn't change the rendering at all, but it will just help us to identify all the add and subtract buttons on the page, and this way we can add event handlers to them. So at the end of the classes for the subtract buttons, let's call this class counter dash update dash btn. And also for the add button, we will do the same class counter update btn. So now we can add an event handler to all these buttons. So we will use this $selector from jQuery, and we will add these. We will select this class that we just added. Make sure you add dot in front. So then we need to add our event handler. So we will do on click of this buttons, and we can add a new function that takes the event argument. So here we can just we can simply click the log to the console the event, the element ID where the click was performed. So we can do clicked on. So we will do event target.id, and now we can verify if it works correctly. So we need to make sure we reload the page to get the latest changes. So now if we go to console in here, we click on subtract, so it will say clicked on sub-2, which is correct. This one clicked on add-3, which is also correct. So it means the event handlers were added correctly. Next, we will work on sending the request to the server. So for doing this, we need two pieces of information. The first one is the type of operation we are making, so add or subtract. And the second one is the counter ID, so 1, 2, or 3. And we can extract both of these from the button ID, from event target ID. So it's actually pretty easy to do. We will just split the event target ID into components, and we will unpack them. So we'll do operation and ID. So we'll do event target ID split dash. So here, if we print both of them, operation and ID, and we need to refresh the page again. So if we inspect this one, we go to console. So we click here, it will say subtract from the third counter. Now add to the third counter, add to the second counter. So it's what we wanted. For sending the Ajax request, we will also use jQuery. You can also use fetch. It's up to you. jQuery works very well. So if we go back to the jQuery main page, there's an example in here that we can modify. So in here, we will just paste this one in our event handler. We don't have the API endpoint right now, but we will add it later. We will call the API endpoint, let's say counters update. So we need to provide the two pieces of information. We have the operation and the ID. And we need to set the method to post. So on the success, when the request is successful, we will just log success. And the result. And if it fails, it will be error handler function. Let's call this one error. And we will do console.error failed, and we will log the error. We no longer need that line. So now if we go back to our web page, we refresh it. So if we try to click on any buttons, we should see an error. It says failed, and if we expand this object, it should say status 404 not found, which is normal. We don't have that endpoint right now. Okay, next we will add the endpoint to our server. So we will go to counter to views.python. So in here we will add our view. It will be called update. It takes a request as the only argument. So first we will check that the request method is post. If it's not post, then we will just return HTTP response bad request. Let's say invalid method. Yeah, we don't need to provide too many explanations why the request failed. We can just say bad request. Okay, very good. So now we will create a form class to process the form fields. So let's call this one update form. This one will be derived from forms.form. And it has the two fields, operation, which is forms, character field, char field, and ID. Forms the integer, an integer field. We need to, yeah, this one is from forms. We need to import it from Django forms, I think. Yeah. Django, correct. Okay, so now we can just extract this form from the data we received in our view. So it will be form equals update form from request.post. So if the form is not valid, not form is valid, we need to do this validation before we can get the data. We will return bad request again. Otherwise, we can just print the, let's say, form cleaned data. There's this field that will show us the data in a form, and let's just return a HTTP response, okay, just to make sure everything is good. Like that. And now we need to add this update method to our URLs inside counter. Let's call this one update. And actually without this thing. Views.update, and the name will be update. Okay, so now if we try again, we need to reload the page. We will see that the request failed again, and the response will be status 403, forbidden. And if we look in the server logs in the terminal, it will see forbidden CSRF token is missing. This is because all the HTTP requests that modify data, so all the post request, put request, delete, etc., they need to have this CSRF token that prevents the cross-site request forgery requests. So if we search for Django CSRF, you can read more about what this type of attack entails, what are the vulnerabilities, but you need to keep it. So usually when we have a form, we just add this token by this directive in the template. But when we make a request with Ajax, we need to set it through this header, and actually the CSRF token will be populated by Django in a cookie with the name CSRF token. So we can, in order to extract this cookie, Django provides us this code, and also we can use this JavaScript library, which we will do. So in here, again, we will add it from the CDN. Copy this HTML in here. So inside index, also before our event handler code, we will add the JS cookie code. So now we will just need to add the header. So in here, in the Ajax request, we will add a new field called headers. So the header name will be x-csrf token. And now we will get the cookies, the cookie with cookies.get, and it will be CSRF token. So now if we go back to our page and we refresh it, so now if we, let's click any button, now we will see that it says success, so we managed to pass the token correctly. Now all we need to do is to write the code on the server that actually updates the value of the counter, and then the code in the UI that updates the value in the UI. So we are going to start with the server. So every time we read a value from a database and then we make a transformation on this value, like incrementing or decrementing, and then writing back the updated value, it's a good practice to lock the row we are updating in order to prevent race conditions. So let's say the value of our counter is 2, and then 2 increment operations come at the same time. We want the value to be 4, not 3, while if we're not careful, we can end up with 3. So the first thread or process reads 2, increments 1 to 3, and tries to write 3, and then in the meanwhile the second process also read 2, incremented 1, and writes 3. So it's good to lock the database rows whenever we do a read, then write updated value. For doing this in Django, we need to use the select for update. So if we search for Django select for update, let's see, select for update, it says returns a query set that will lock rows until the end of the transaction. And here there is an example of how to use it, and we will do this right here. Also, in the meanwhile, we can see that we printed here actually the form clean data. So if we go back to our page, we try an operation, we can see this is the form data we received. We have inside clean data, we have this dictionary which has operation, field, add, and ID, which is perfect with what we need to do. Actually, let's save this one in a new value, like that. So now we will do with transaction atomic, and in here we will do object counter objects select for update, and we will get the object with the ID of data.id. We need to import this transaction atomic, like that. Also, we have to handle the case where we don't have a counter with the provided ID. We need to return HTTP 404 in that case. So we need to catch an exception. For that scenario, will be except object does not exist, and we need to raise, let's see, HTTP 404. Okay, we need to import this class as well. So now we need to update the value field of our object. Let's say we add 1 if data of operation is add, else we subtract 1, and we save the object, and then we return an HTTP response with the object that value. This is the updated count. So now let's see what happens when we try to add to this counter with 2. We can see we received success 3. So now we just need to place this 3 value in the correct span, which is the inside index it will be the span with the ID value of counter ID. So in here on success, instead of printing it, we select the element that has the pound value and then the ID. No, actually we need to do the interpolation with ID like that, and we need to set the HTML to result. Just like that. And now if we refresh, we can see that the counters work as expected. Well, of course they can go negative, but we didn't prevent them at any point. So anyway, that's pretty much the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. The source code will be below, and you can like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks.